Hello, this is Brian Scuttle with Sonic Cinema. I had the pleasure recently to talk with writer-director Lynn Shelton about her new movie Sort of Trust. It's opening in Atlanta this Friday. It stars Marc Maron as a pawn shop owner who comes across a very interesting artifact and the journey that takes him on. It's it's predominantly a comedy, but it's also very much an film about emotional ideas with regards to Mark Maron's character and also the idea of how people and things can mean something to people and the way that ties into some of the things that we're seeing nowadays in reality. And it's a really lovely film. It opened on July 12th, and it's opening in Atlanta this week. And I was very pleased to be able to talk with Lynn Shelton about it. We had some technical difficulties, but I think you'll enjoy what she had to say. The first question I was basically letting her know how I felt about the movie and what it was about, and this was her response.
Well, that you just described exactly what I was aiming for. So you've made me a very happy person right now to hear that. Well, really, the genesis of it came from wanting to work with Marc. I really, the first time we worked together was when I directed his show Maron for a couple episodes of his fourth season, and I loved what an incredibly natural. I bet he had a really compelling on-screen presence, and he was such an interesting, raw talent. He really was. He's like a natural actor. He just is a great listener. He's very engaged, and he's very adjustable. So I feel like I can be useful as a director in helping to shape the emotional kind of journey of whatever character he's playing. And we just seem to sort of gel well in that collaborative relationship. So we started talking as soon as that experience was complete. We started talking about making a movie together. And actually, he and I were starting to co-write a movie. And we have been writing it ever since for the last 3.5 years. It was very slow going. And at a certain point, I got a little exasperated and said, I really just want to get on set with you, and we got to have a script in order to do that. And he said, well, go write me another movie, and I'll begin it. Give you a couple weeks, And so I came to him with this and said, all right, fully improvised movie. I see you as a pawn shop owner. What do you think? And he's like, yeah, sounds good. So that was the starting point. And I knew I wanted to do a comedy because I just done my first drama, and I was ready to laugh. And I wanted to try out something different in terms of the genre and really go more screwball, more comedy caper. I'd never done that before. I've always stayed firmly in the real world with dramatic comedies. And so I wanted emotionally, like you just said, emotionally grounded people, but, letting them get in over their heads into a slightly outlandish scenario, And I wanted it to be culturally relevant without it being, you wanting to slit your wrists when you walked out, So satire was going to be better than a kind of a hard-hitting drama in the post-truth era. And I liked the idea of there being a con, and then conspiracy theories just kind of came into play naturally, which really helps make it relevant because I feel like we're having a peak moment in conspiracy theory land. So that was something that sort of naturally happened. And, so it just kind of spiraled out from that first the setting of being a pawn shop.
Next up, we talked about Marc Maron, who is really good in the movie. It's one of my favorite performances of the year. And the way he shows sympathy, even when he is very cynical, as core, and where that comes from with the character. And what she had to say about that was really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely a kind of anybody who has been in relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship or a family relationship or a deep friends relationship with an addict, even if they're recovering, but there's that struggle, they're struggling, a struggling addict. If you care about that person, it's a really difficult place to be in, and it can be really heartbreaking. And that was territory that we thought would just be a great resonant place for that guy to be in, because I wanted a guy who would really sort of shut down, had decided to just stop being vulnerable, and he's walled up, and he's trying to put up a loving wall to detach with love, but ultimately, it really grinds him down, and he just decides to give up on connecting with other human beings in a deep way, and altogether. And so this movie sort of shows a story that enables him to establish a sort of trust. That's kind of why I named it that, so that it would sort of feel like you sort of trust somebody. And what do you call that? A phona? I can't remember. Anyway, it sounds sort of trust. Sounds like sort of trust, and there's a reason for it. And the reason is that he's throughout the course of the story, his emotional arc is that he goes from completely shut off emotionally to slowly sort of opening himself up, and he ends up in a slightly different place.
Like I said earlier, the film has a theme with regards to how people value certain things or individuals, and that can be a monetary value, that can be a personal value, emotional value, and the way that the film plays out goes into very unexpected territory with regards to that. And what she had to say with regards to that and sort of how that became the idea of the film was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the idea. It was. I liked the idea. I came up with Pawn Shop, but I didn't know where it was going to be. I knew that would give me a lot of opportunity for narrative, just by mere function of the fact there's all these, as you said, items imbued with meaning, throughout the shop, old, interesting artifacts, and that means something to somebody, probably along the line. And then it's an opportunity for anybody, any kind of character, to walk into that store, whether they're looking for something, whether they're pawning something, picking something up, whatever it is. And I knew I thought it would be interesting, again, along the lines of trying to look for some comedy caper kind of thing. I always thought it'd be interesting if there's some sort of con involved, somebody conning somebody else, trying to, and then doubling back and conning the other person, like sort of twists and turns and people conning each other, or trying to. And my friend actually invited me to Kentucky because he has a spare home. And he said, they usually like Airbnbs out. And he said, come on out with your co-writer and write the script. And we did. And because we were in Kentucky, we thought, well, what if it was a problematic artifact that came into the shop, And our mind immediately went to the Civil War, and then it sort of spiraled out from there. But I did, again, it's the effort to make a film that was culturally relevant. One of the things that I wanted to reference, seems obvious place, was this post-truth era, and this sort of conspiracy theory world of people just coming up with their own revisionist histories, sets of what do they call it, alternative facts, right? And so that just seemed like a fun one, and it's so ridiculous. And I was like half a second going, I wonder if people would believe, though, that anybody could possibly believe in this ridiculousness. But listen, once you go online and you start looking at conspiracy theories, people will fucking believe in anything. So, on one hand, I'm surprised. On the other hand, I'm not surprised at all. That I get asked all the time, is that one that exists already and that you just used? And I was like, no, I made it up. But I mean, sure, why not? I understand why you would say that, because people believe anything, even though it makes absolutely no logical sense whatsoever, considering where we've been since then. It's, there's nothing about it that could possibly be true. But it's, what does that matter?
Next, I asked her about the film's release. This was recorded the day of the initial release on July 12th. It played a few film festivals prior to it, and we talked about that for a little bit.
Yeah, it's opening in New York City today. Okay. So Marc Maron and I are here. We've been doing press all day today. We did it all day yesterday, and we're going to do some Q&As at the couple of theaters that it's opening at in Manhattan today and tomorrow and Sunday. And then it starts rolling out much more. Like, I think it opens in something like 12 theaters next Friday on the 19th, and then the Friday after that, even more theaters. I think the total is something like 38 theaters at this point, all around the country. So it's pretty great.
A last question, Warren.
Finally, I thanked her for her time, and we went on our way. Thank you very much for joining me. I apologize for the structure of this interview. Unfortunately, the way it had to be recorded, I was unable to get my portion of the interview, which is unfortunate, but I hope you enjoyed listening to Lynn Shelton talk about her movie Sort of Trust, which opens in Atlanta this week. Thank you very much.
Well, I really appreciate you promoting it. As you know, it's a tiny film like this. It can use all the help it can get in getting the word out. So I hope that folks go to see it in Atlanta and enjoy it there. So I thank you, sir.